Hi, and welcome to Accounting Game Changers. I'm Jennifer Fennell. I'm part of the Accounting Seed team, and I'm calling in today from the Washington, D.C. metro area. I'm so glad that you took the time to join us today. We're going to be talking about automation, security, and connected technology, and how it can help accounting and finance get to the next level. But before we get started, I'd like to go over a couple of housekeeping items. We are very open to your thoughts and questions, and we hope that you'll share those with us. Please just use the chat function, and at the end of the webinar, we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. In addition, this webinar is being recorded, and we will send a link with a copy of it after the webinar is completed. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers. I'm really excited today to share with you our experts in the accounting and Salesforce fields. Joining us from outside of Baltimore, Maryland is Chris Johannes, and from Kansas City is Ryan Seavey. Ryan is the Chief Technology Officer at Accounting Seed, as well as a featured author and speaker for Salesforce development best practices. For fun, Ryan enjoys coaching youth sports, hiking, and cooking. Chris is a CPA as well as the Director of Client Services at Accounting Seed. He has extensive experience in corporate accounting and finance, and today serves as a subject matter expert for training and technical writing to help ensure our customers get the most value from their software. In his free time, Chris enjoys reading, biking, and spending time with his adorable golden retriever. With that, I'd like to pass it over to you, Ryan and Chris. Thanks so much for joining us today.
I can certainly vouch for the adorable golden retriever. Bailey is super cute. So, as we got to thinking about game changers, really maybe take a step back and look at some of the game changers that we've seen through history. And of course, industrial revolutions came to mind for this. It started with the first industrial revolution back in the mid-late 19th century. You had steam power, mechanization, steam locomotives, a perfect example of that. Ultimately, that led to the second industrial revolution in the early 20th century. Standardization, mass production, the Model T Ford, right? That brought us ultimately to the third industrial revolution, or the digital revolution. This brought on computers and the internet, and right now, today in 2022, we're sitting still smack dab in the fourth industrial revolution. This industrial revolution is really focused on automation, interconnectivity, the Internet of Things, all things as it relates to having everything talk and automate, robotic processes, et cetera. And so it really brought us to think about, what is the role of an accounting solution in the fourth industrial revolution alongside all the other systems in your systems landscape? Next slide here. So what if you could connect all of your systems on one platform? What would that mean to you and to your business? I think that's something that we really should examine here today as we think about our game changers. So going back to that fourth industrial revolution, one thing that characterizes this industrial revolution is that interconnectivity. And the way that we think about interconnectivity is that single source of truth, having one consolidated platform where all of this information can coexist. All too often I hear about users that have to do this in system A, and then they go to system B and they rekey, some of that data, and they're pivoting between systems. And ultimately what this causes is a disconnect, right? You have some data that needs to be trued up. You have some data that's not keyed in the same way. You have data that's disparate across the system. So what if all that data was all together? It would give you things like unified reporting. You wouldn't have to check or audit that the data matches between one system and the next. And with an API first design, one that Salesforce has, one that we've adopted internally here at Accounting Seed, it becomes super simple to load data into the system, to manage that data and have that data connect to each other. So you think about the way that we manage accounts and contacts, how that ultimately ties through sales processes, through accounting processes, service processes, and the like. All this can become one interconnected single source of truth that becomes critical for how you manage your business and all of its internal processes. So I'll give an example here for traceability and auditability. We internally here at Accounting Seed capitalize the software development expense that we have with one release over the next. And so, when it comes time to everyone's favorite time of year, when the auditors are checking out your books, we were being asked, well, how can we track the amount of time and effort and expense that you're capitalizing into these releases. And it was really simple for us, frankly. We were able to show them how our engineers are reporting time cards, the costs that are associated to that, ultimately how that's consolidated and booked into the general ledger in terms of that capitalization. In one 30-minute call with our auditors, we were able to walk through from time recording all the way to the general ledger exactly what we're capturing for this capitalization. And the funny thing is, our auditor said at the end of the call, this is the easiest audit we've ever had of software capitalization. And they had everything that they needed to do to dig in deep. They could walk through the system. And it was kind of neat to see them move forward with that audit. So let's move on to the next slide here. But you shouldn't just take our word for it. Yes, that's one success story, but I think one story that we really love to highlight here is one of our customers, Lionheart Critical Power Specialists. They provide critical backup and power system solutions to banks, hospitals, universities. So you can imagine having a very responsive, interconnected system is critical for them. So, they were really focused as they looked at an accounting solution, but also other internal critical systems like their sales and service processes. One consolidated single source of truth, everything interconnected, and it really let them hone their focus on, their indirect costs and direct costs in their work orders, all things related to their service and support out in the field, having that all in one place. The eye-popping metric for this is that they were able to have 40% growth of their business but maintain their existing staff. So if you think about your business and where you're at in your journey, and to add 40% more of what your business is doing, but maintain that current staff, that's pretty incredible. And what that screams to me is efficiency, right? Having one interconnected solution like this drove efficiency through their organization. And it's really neat to hear Janae talk about what Accounting Seed and one cohesive platform, one interconnected solution, what it meant for their business. So, I think having one interconnected solution, one single source of truth, really starts to open up the doors to the next game changer that we're going to talk about here today. And that is automation. Automation is unlocked by having that single source of truth. And for that, I'll hand it over to Chris, and he's going to walk us through some examples of that.
Thanks, Ryan. So yeah, automation and having all data on one platform is key, right, to growing your business and to maximizing efficiency. Right now, accountants historically have always been gatherers. I like to say that the last several years, and I had a CEO several years ago say he wanted his accounting department transitioning from being gatherers, going to the old caveman days, to being actual hunters, people that were actually there helping drive the business. So if you can minimize your mundane transactions and eliminate some of those repetitive tasks, you can start to better focus on what it is that you can add value and provide leadership with the right metrics and data so that they can drive and lead the business. All on one platform also, so that helps you focus on what matters. Being on one platform does certainly improve data accuracy and having automation. And we're going to walk through an example here and what we here in Accounting Seed do with some of our automations and mainly related to the revenue lifecycle. So we'll show you that in a second, but if you're all on one platform, you're not counting on people having to enter repetitive information. The sales rep enters information and has the customer that they have to put in, and then it gets over to accounting, who then has to enter the same information and pull up that account on one platform and through the various processes we have set up. That information gets set up once, pulls right through. It also, being all on one platform, helps you manage. You can see anomalies very quickly. You can predict, if you set up automations, repetitive tasks and see what is going to be occurring and have them set up on a regular schedule that automatically occurs. And AI-driven insights. So what we're going to show you is, if you are in Salesforce, you start with and your sales reps start with the opportunity. Accounting Seed interfaces with and picks up at the opportunity level. So a lot of what we start with is there. And internally, we have automations that from an opportunity can go and create, based off of certain triggers, for lack of a better way of putting it, create records ongoing, set up a recurring billing record, then create a billing record. We also have automations that will process that bill all the way to completion through it. Actually, the payment comes in. We also have automations built in that if we are amortizing revenue, and we have a deferred revenue practice here, we have a process of automatically take that invoice and break out the records and amortize them and recognize the revenue over a defined period of time that we set up when we're setting the record. And then ultimately, again, the next billing that comes. So we'll start here, and I'll just give you an example with an opportunity and how it all works beautifully together, being on one platform and all interconnected, right? We have a sales rep who has now entered an opportunity, they've entered a product, and another key about being on one platform is it's all centralized, right? You don't have to worry about when a new product is entered, we then need to go enter it into X system so that they can also process it in our accounting system. It's all in Salesforce, it's here. We've added a new product. We've got the product over here. The sales rep sold an annual security monitoring service. Note a few things. We've linked to the account. So all the data that's on that account is here. There's a contact. All the contact information is there. Key when we get around to A, sending quotes, and B, sending out the invoices. You'll also notice that it's highlighted this stage. We set up, and you can do this with automations, a flow that basically when a status is changed, a trigger happens. And when it goes to close ready to process, several things happen. A recurring billing is created, a billing is created. And in our system, I have it set up so that we also have a project that is created based on another couple of key factors on here. Is it selling X amount of consulting hours? If so, then it will go to this and creates a project with all the projects and associated tasks with it. But in that automation behind the scenes, although this can be done manually as well, we create a recurring billing record directly from that opportunity. So it's pulling everything through. We're not doing anything. There's no risk of an accountant or somebody intervening and misentering address information or incorrectly entering the email address or putting in the wrong sale amount or the wrong product. On this screen, we're setting up that, okay, for this particular service, I'm going to be doing an annual contract, and I wanted to go ahead and create the initial billing. I don't want to just create a recurring billing record. I then process this, or the system, actually in our system, the automation processes this and immediately generates a recurring billing record. This is simply a template that you use for future billings. You can have it automatically generate those bills in the future, or you can actually click a button that says, go ahead and create this right now. But notice we have a couple of things here. It created this recurring billing record. I also selected, I wanted to generate the initial bill. So I already have a billing record and it's linked, so it all links back. All on one system, can all link back and forth. And you'll note now I also have another billing date. I billed it on July 21st. My next date is going to be the 21st of 2023. This is key from an automation standpoint because behind the scenes, we have an automation set up that'll go through and every day we'll look at this field on all the recurring records and say, okay, does that date equal today or was it earlier? If for some reason you set this up after the fact, if it does, create the record. It'll automatically create that billing record. What also happened,
Chris, I'll jump in. You know, as you were talking about the automation, it really reminded me of consistency. You know, the other day I was talking with someone and they were talking about how they had some users that were manually keying in some information. And the catch for them was that the data was inconsistent, right? So they were doing some reporting on their revenue and they found that some of the revenue was misclassed and they had to do all kinds of analytics to kind of unpack what had happened. But ultimately they chose to automate very similar to what you're describing here to help just make sure that it's consistent, right? That we don't have kind of that user error entry where, you know, you have someone accidentally key it to this that day, or maybe they're new and they haven't been trained yet. So I think that's a really key piece of that automation is that consistency that you were touching on there.
Yep, agree. And so once we've now got the billing created, and where Ryan was talking about that, you have one person consistently entering information. You are entering one record at front, especially when you're doing recurring. And then there, the data is set up, it's been audited to start. And so you don't have 100 records being created by individuals where 50 could be incorrect. You've got the one record, it's verified, and from that point forward, it's going to be accurate because it just consistently moves forward. So when we did that billing and that automation, that created that recurring billing, also then created this billing, a couple of things happened here. In the back, first off, we'll note that, again, all on one platform. So it's linking. So I can come into this record and I can click on, these are all hyperlinks, all on one system, and say, okay, what opportunity did this come from? If I need to go look up what the original sales or the original quote was, or the original sales contract was, I could, and you have that on the opportunity, I could click that link, takes me right back there. I can see what recurring billing record this came from. And there are all the other data on here. But a couple of things I want to also point out here is I have a received amount. I sent this bill out, but in our system, you can do this, we have an automation set up. So this is a little bit hours later, day later, whatnot. What happened is when this bill got generated, there's an automation behind the scenes that automatically will email this invoice out. And it did that, okay? We also have an automation that creates that PDF, emails that invoice out, but also embeds the link for a credit card payment. So when the client gets this email with the invoice on it, they can click on the link and pay it. That payment automatically creates a cash receipt record and automatically associates it and applies it to this billing. So we've right there completed the entire life cycle of this invoice. We have taken it from the opportunity, we've taken the billing, we've gone through, generated that invoice, recorded that in our general ledger, emailed it out to the client, they clicked on it, came in, recorded the cash receipt, we now have our payment, this invoice is closed. In addition, yes?
Chris, having those email messages go out, all those get tracked against there as well. So you have that full traceability, like what communications were sent. You can really get deep insights into where they are in the process with that too.
Exactly. So when that happens, and it falls under, in this system, we'll actually attach it to the invoice. So you can actually go into every record under the notes and files, and you will see that invoice that got sent out to that client. You'll also see activity on the record that shows the email went out, who it went to. We also, though, had an automation built in, because, you know, if you notice on my opportunity, I set it up as an annual contract. So we were billing annually, but we don't want to recognize the revenue, right? We want to defer that revenue. We did that, but we had an automation built that as soon as that record was created, it creates the amortization records based on the criteria we have set up. And so there you have, I have my partial amortization revenue recognition for July, because we had some days left in July, and then straight line the remaining 12 months. Now you don't see all 12 months because I need to click the view all. We're seeing 10 on my screen here, but it automatically set that up and recorded those entries in the future. So I don't have to go do anything. There's no Excel spreadsheets that I'm maintaining. There's no third-party app that I'm maintaining that I'm calculating this information. It's automatically created and posted within our system. Now back to the opportunity, I just wanted to point this out. Again, being all in one system, we've done a bill, we've done a recurring bill, and now I can go back to that opportunity, or the sales rep can come into that opportunity and see the related billings, the related recurring billings, everything that's associated with this record. Now, a couple other key things I did not point out, and actually I want to go back, is on the billing, you can have many other fields. It's Salesforce, so you got customizations. Here, in a situation like this, you could add the sales rep and have them automatically populate onto this record from the opportunity, and at which point, especially if you're paying commissions purely based on sales, you can generate a commission report. You can generate a commission report on sales that have been paid, all directly from within here. Some of the things you can automate, and notice here, first we'll go through this. We can do bills. You can set up recurring billings, recurring payables for your accruals. Say your rent. Say you have to accrue a bonus plan. You have to accrue expenses for a future sales trip, things like that. You can do recurring journal entries. You can do recurring payables for, say, your rent. Every month you're going to be paying rent. You can set up a recurring payable. You can do the automated email billing. And notice we can also do this multiple times a day. So I can have the automated email go out, which is what we do. And you can set that up to do daily, set it up to do daily in the evening, at any hour of the day, or you could set it up to do 24 times a day, send out bills, one every hour, or one job every hour. You can also do what's called a scheduled post. In other words, you can create records, but not actually record them to your general ledger unless you want them to, once they've been approved. And then that way someone doesn't have to go in and do it, especially if you have approval processes. You can use a Salesforce approval process. It'll update the record automatically, and then you can post those records to your general ledger. You can schedule a bank download, connect to your bank directly, download the transactions, match them up, even have it set up so that it automatically adds them if the record does not exist. Recurring billing period tasks, it's simply notifications on, hey, you have to do this, it's month end. Or every quarter you should be doing this transaction. And some of these things you can do on demand. So say you don't want to wait half hour or an hour to email bills, or you have it set up to do only one time a night, but you want to do it right away, you can do that job on demand. Now also notice in here, there's no code. It's all point and click technology. So you don't have to have developers per se to come in and code your system. Now, a couple things that are also key to being on one platform, having it all together and in real time, is you can view anomalies pretty quickly. Here's a very simple dashboard that I'm using that gives me a couple bits of information. One, I can look at, hey, real quick, what are my next billings? What contract billings am I going to have? What are my upcoming recurring bills that I already have set up over the next 30 days? And I can see here that I've got 2 million in annual contracts I'm going to be sending out in the next month, next week. Okay, and I got 450,000 in quarterlies, a couple in semi-annuals, and I have a block of monthlies as well. But what I can also notice over here under the contract billing by period is I got a bit of an anomaly here. I'm doing pretty well and sort of slowly growing, but suddenly July goes way down. What happened there? Similar to the example Ryan just said, they had a client that had somebody entering incorrect information. You'd be able to catch that fairly quickly rather than waiting a couple months or a month down the line and saying, hey, wait, what happened? And then trying to find out what occurred and back into and resolve the situation. Right here in another example, I know Ryan gave one example, but Avada Learning, they are in the learning space. They were able to save about 40 hours in their estimate each month in their close process. Overall, from automations that they put in place, particularly around the billing cycle, similar to what we have. They have it set up where they've created their invoices and there's very little interaction from the accounting team or need for the accounting team to proactively generate these records. They're not setting them up. They have it automatically set up to generate the invoices, automatically set up to email out those invoices with payment information so that they can collect that payment. Again, far more timely than printing the invoices, stuffing them in envelopes, much more cost efficient, mailing them out, waiting for their client to get the bill, and then having their client pay. It's all done online, it's all done interactively, has all the bells and whistles, as they say in their quote here. They also have, because they also have the billing contact set up, they have all that contact information. Again, in their situation, completes the revenue life cycle from start to finish. So what could be more important than security? And for this, we will turn it back over to Ryan.
Sure, thanks, Chris. So I don't know if there's any Marvel movie fans out there, maybe specifically Spider-Man fans, but there's some quote about with great power comes great responsibility, and I can't help but draw the parallel here. When we're talking about a single source of truth, highly interconnected system, I can't help but think about security and trust, right? If this system, this single source of truth is mission critical to your business, we need to be able to trust that it's up and available and accessible to all your users. And we want to make sure that we have a high degree of control over what's being accessed. And I think that's a really compelling piece of the conversation as we consider a consolidated solution like this. So, I think that's one of the great benefits of being on the Salesforce platform. Trust is their number one value. You've probably seen it from their marketing and all their communications. And I think as a native solution built on Salesforce's platform, of course, trust becomes our top focus as well. So with this platform, you can give individual users control to applications, to specific fields on any kind of object or table, or specific records even. Earlier we talked about pivoting between systems. And I think, something that is oftentimes overlooked is that concept of a single identity in a system. So if I'm a user and I'm logging into one system and then I pivot to the next and the next, I have a different user with different permissions and different capabilities in each system, right? And so oftentimes you're fighting that battle of, do I have enough access? Do I have too much access? You know, how do I control and manage provision and deprovision users with onboarding and offboarding? That can be tough, but with one single system, you can have one single identity, which will allow you to define what are the appropriate profiles, permissions, security, et cetera, for that user in that single system. You know, some of the great things about that platform too is that it really helps you support your own security audits. So this security audit can be captured with the setup audit trail. This is a fantastic utility for kind of understanding what's going on in your environment. So you can see if people are creating new fields, deleting fields, adding new objects, adding new users, changing users' permissions, that kind of thing. I think one thing that really stands out to me as a fantastic capability is flagging anomalous user behavior. So you can set up rules to observe user behavior and flag anything that seems out of the norm. So let's say I have a user that logs in day after day, they're logging in expenses, they're logging time, whatever that might be. But one day that user goes and runs a report on all of your contacts, names, email addresses, home addresses, and phone numbers. That's out of the norm, right? That would be bizarre for a specific user. And so you can set up flags to alert your administrators or even block them from running certain types of reports based on what's typical for their usage behavior. I think another great thing to call out here too would be high assurance sessions. So, you know, we've all probably heard that hypothetical scenario where you're at a coffee shop, you get up to grab a glass of water, do something else, and someone jumps in front of your computer to go do something. High assurance sessions will force your users to re-authenticate before they access some critical piece of functionality or enact some critical change throughout the system. And so those high assurance sessions can be used to really, really carefully manage sensitive areas of the system. So, you know, we're talking about that anomalous user behavior, and as I was doing a little bit of homework on this, I found this really interesting statistic. So there was a study done by IBM. There's a focus on a cost of a data breach, and you know, with that example of like running a report to pull all your contacts and their home addresses and things like that out of the system, kind of a typical data exfiltration situation. You know, that can cost an organization up to $180 per record that's been breached. Now, you think about your own internal database, what kind of information that you have in there that may be PII or otherwise sensitive information, that can add up quite a bit for an organization. So having the proper security controls in place for such an interconnected system is really paramount. And I think it's important to consider a system and a solution that would support you in that journey. As well. So going into yet another example, so DLS, Diplomatic Language Services, I really like this example because it kind of highlights all three of these major game changers that we've talked about here today. So automation, interconnected solution, and security and audit trail for everything else. So this is an organization that moved away from tracking things in Excel spreadsheets. You know, guilty as charged. I've done that most certainly. But you know, in their journey, they went from using Excel spreadsheets, certainly have potential for errors, to using one consolidated system. So all of that data flows into the same single source of truth, same database. They had automations to pull data through the system and their various business processes. Lost the slide there. And then of course, leaving that audit trail in place as well. So everyone can see with the right level of permission and security, what's being carried out through the system. So what did this mean for DLS? This meant a 75% reduction in time sent to record and to send invoices. So again, I think that really highlights that use case of efficiency, right? I think all of us are very focused on doing more with the resources that we have. And I think this is yet another success story of a interconnected, automated solution with that high trust and security that can help drive a business.
Thank you, Ryan.
So we do have a little bit of Q&A here, and I would encourage anyone who's on the line, feel free, add your comments in chat, add your comments into the questions. We'll do our best to answer everything here. Chris, I know you were touching on this a little bit earlier. You said no code required, but I do have a question. Is a developer required to build automations? I think it's open-ended, but automations of all shapes and sizes. I don't know if you can offer any insights on that.
Generally not. A lot of the stuff you saw that I was showing don't require a developer, especially those flows where I talked about we have automations built up or in the opportunity. So based off of a status change, I am a CPA by background, not a developer at all. And I actually created the flows that say, okay, when this status changes to a certain status, closed, awaiting, or ready to be processed, based on a couple other conditions within the opportunity, I have a flow that automatically will create a record in Accounting C called a project, and then sub-records to that called project tasks. And then it will assign budgeted hours based again on information that's off of that opportunity. The flow to create the recurring billing and billings were done by actually an individual who's generally in marketing here, but he went through and created that flow.
So I heard it here first. Your marketing department is going to start building automations in your accounting solution. Okay.
So easy, even a marketer can do it. That's what I heard.
Well, hey, hold on. Well, that's great. So I don't want to shy away from the fact that at times developers may be required for certain types of automations, but I think you're really highlighting. I think that's the power of this platform, Salesforce platform. There's a lot that you can do with clicks, not code, and even sometimes when a developer is involved, they can build a programmatic piece of automation that can be accessed with point and click type of things. So yeah, that's a great call out here. Let's see, other questions. Okay, which types of automations have the most impact to an organization? Boy, how long is a piece of string? That one can go lots of different directions. So I think what I would say on this is I would focus on processes that have maturity, right? Automations by definition are predictable or have a kind of a predefined set of actions that need to occur. So if you and your organization are considering investing in building automations or adopting a platform that would give you a high degree of control over those automations, the things that I would focus on would be the low-hanging fruit, the things that have very repeatable processes that you can kind of define, if-then kind of actions. Like, I know that if this is a monitoring product, then it needs to create this type of recurring billing. I think that's a great example. So as you consider automations in your organization, of course, look at what's causing the organization pain, what's taking the most amount of time or creating inconsistencies. But on that note, think about your most mature processes, because those are kind of probably ingrained in the organization, things that you could understand very quickly, like where to focus on. And then I think it kind of grows from there. Automation can lead to other automation, right? Iron sharpens iron. So as you tackle one automation, the next automation, which may not have been achievable previously, would now become possible because you have consistency in other processes in place there. So it can go lots of ways. But sorry, Chris, you were saying?
No, well, I was also going to say, if I were doing it, I'd focus on month-end repetitive processes. Every month you have to make journal entries to record depreciation, although in our system you can set it up so it automatically creates those. But if you wish, you could set up those recurring journal entries. Again, for sales trip, the president's trip accrual that you might have, things that every month you're going to be making an entry for. So instead of having to have somebody make the entry and then go key it in, have the system automatically make those processes and entries.
Awesome. Okay, I think we've got one more question. Again, if you have any other questions, please get them into the chat window or to the question window here. Let's see here. So, Chris, I think you or I could knock this one out. Not all of our data is in Salesforce. What's the best way to bring that data into a single place?
From my standpoint, you're the developer, you may have better ways, but there's simple import templates. You can use any sort of Excel converted to a CSV file, and Salesforce has multiple tools that are of their own that you can use to just import that data. That's how we get all our clients' data, and we get all our accounts in. It's through a simple a CSV file, basic point and click, and tell it where you want these fields to map to, click a button and it imports it all.
I totally agree with you. I think, I would also kind of layer onto that sort of ad hoc processes and then like repeatable processes. So I think what you were describing is perfect for the ad hoc processes. You take a file and upload it. Sometimes if there's like an ongoing feed of data, you can consider other more robust automation, like a middleware type of automation that can help load data into the system. So I think it just sort of depends how much time it's taking the organization to get the data into the system. But I think I'd fall back on, again, that single source of truth. Once the data is in the system, you can take action on it. You can have it feed and inform other processes. So I think it just kind of ends up varying depending on what the organization's doing. So.
Yep. And back to that, I've had clients that use third-party tools that actually integrate or interface with Salesforce and to say Excel, where they enter certain data. And again, we don't like to encourage that, but they can pull that information and then instantly pull it into Salesforce so that they then have it on that single platform.
Makes sense.
Nice.
Let's see here. I don't see any other questions. It just might be the 3 here for today.
Right. That's great. Ryan, Chris, excellent information today, not the least of which was with great power comes great responsibility.
Oh my gosh.
Who isn't a Marvel fan?
Yeah.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much for all the information you shared today. And thank you to everyone who joined the call, submitted questions. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk with us about these really important game changers. Of course, I would like to, as a marketer, invite you to please follow us on social media. We do post informative blogs and educational guides. We are on Twitter, LinkedIn. Follow us and you'll be updated whenever the latest information comes out. And of course, if you'd like to see how automation, security, and connected technology could help your organization, let's talk. We would love to help you figure out how Accounting Seed can help your finance and accounting department get to the next level. Thanks again for everything. Have a great rest of your day.
All right.
Thanks.